Amongst the most profound verses in the Quran about the entire economy is the following verse, وَحَلَّ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا. Although this translates simply as Allah has permitted trade and forbidden interest, the reality of this verse is that it outlines and underscores how the worldly economy should be functioning. Allah is directing us towards an economy based on trade and not a riba-based system. In this video, let's dive in and explore the key differences between a trade-based system and a riba-based system. The first major difference between a trade-based system and a riba-based system is that in trade, both parties are naturally incentivized to fulfill their mutual needs. Each of them have something that the other party wants. They are aligned and they are incentivized to do everything to act in an optimal way to get the deal across the line. And when the deal is secured and sealed, it's a win-win. They both gain something and leave the transaction. On the other hand, in a riba-based system, the interests are misaligned because the lender, he wants that the borrower defaults and delays paying back. That's how the lender gets more money because the interest keeps compounding. Whereas the borrower wants to pay as soon as possible, as quickly as possible to ensure that the interest payments are kept at a minimum. In a trade-based system, markets send signals naturally adjusting the supply and demand. This ensures efficiency, and therefore the trade markets have a natural interaction between supply and demand, allowing resources to be allocated efficiently. See, when demand rises, prices tend to increase, signaling to producers to increase more. Conversely, when demand falls, prices drop, signaling to producers to decrease production. This dynamic encourages efficient resource use, it prevents shortages and prevents oversupply, and thereby stabilizes the economy. On the other hand, in a riba-based system, it's the business of the lender to continue lending. They want to lend as much as possible as long as they are confident of being repaid to an extent. So they will keep pumping out money. That is their job, and that's how they benefit and gain more. So therefore, the excess supply of credit can lead to artificial demand and bubbles in sectors such as housing, financial markets, and many other sectors. So this dynamic leads to an artificial manipulation between supply and demand. The next major difference between these two systems is that in a trade-based system, markets serve as platforms for price discovery, where buyers and sellers interact to determine the fair value of goods and services. Price discovery is essential for economic decision-making, as it provides critical information to consumers, producers, and policymakers about the true value of goods. And this encourages competition, efficient resource allocation, as well as growth and innovation. In a riba-based system and a riba-based economy, these systems often interfere with fair price discovery. When borrowing becomes a norm for purchasing goods or services, demand artificially inflates prices. Housing markets, for example, become skewed when buyers rely on borrowed money to purchase homes and at inflated values, leading to market distortions. And therefore, the cost of borrowing is really baked into the price of goods and services, making them more expensive and reducing the overall affordability for consumers. Another major difference between these two systems is the misallocation of resources. In a trade-based system, markets help allocate resources efficiently. Businesses invest in areas where they see high returns, which leads to optimal outcomes and allocations of labor, capital, and natural resources. Efficient markets reduce wastage and ensure that goods and services reach those who need them the most, enhancing overall social welfare and societal welfare. On the other hand, in a riba-based system, riba naturally encourages speculative investments because there's cheap credit available, there is money available to spend, and therefore the focus and priority becomes short-term financial gain over productive long-term ventures, because these borrowers have to pay back their lenders. And so the borrowers are more concerned with making sure to get something which is short-term, they get the return and they can pay off the debt, and then they can retain the asset or whatever they are investing in. This can result in capital flowing into asset bubbles or high-risk areas, rather than being directed towards sustainable, value-creating activities, ultimately then destabilizing the economy. The final difference between these two systems is the idea of wealth concentration versus wealth distribution. In a trade-based system, there is naturally a mechanism inbuilt for wealth distribution, because capital alone cannot be lent from a trade-based system perspective. It must be invested by either buying assets, selling assets, or creating partnerships. This means that all the parties are naturally gaining wealth. There's a flow of wealth. Everybody gains from the upside, and when there's a downside risk, everybody bears that risk. On the other hand, in a riba-based system, lending with interest, it exacerbates wealth inequality. It disproportionately benefits the lenders, typically large financial institutions, whilst increasing the debt burden on low-income individuals. Over time, wealth becomes concentrated in the hands of a few as the rich can continue to lend at interest, whilst the poor become trapped in a debt cycle. And then this leads to widening the gap between the rich and the disadvantaged, and therefore wealth becomes, over time, concentrated in the hands of the few against the many. And these are the 5 key differences between these two systems. From a Sharia perspective, it is a trade-based system that is envisaged for the economy. That is the way forward, and not the riba-based system.